Hello. Hey, let's keep talking about some plants here. If you guys remember from yesterday, Monday's lesson, today, Tuesday, we're going to do a couple. Number one, you can see right here, we're going to be focusing on these pages. This book's open. You can follow along right with us. And number two, we're going to talk about just one of those types of plants that we talked about yesterday, how scientists classify plants. We're going to talk about flowering plants. It's just the flower, and why that's so important for those plants, which is most plants that produce seeds from flowers. Here again, I know we're starting with the assignment. Again, I really think it'd be wise if you guys have it, the assignment, the paper packer with you, because you can be doing this as we're going through the lesson. Pause many times on, you can look at the slides. This is your assignment. You need to label the 5 different parts of a plant. Mostly focusing on the flower. That's your assignment. Follow along with us. You get all the answers as we go along here. So, flower is a lot like most regular plants. And when we focus on flowers, just like all plants, they come in all shapes and sizes there, right? Flowers are kind of separated. Some have a lot of different flowers and they curl out, whatever, right? About that. Talk about the petals, talk about all this stuff in the middle and why they're so important. But most vascular plants are exactly like this. Same 3 parts. They have roots, they have the stem, and they have the flower. Vascular plants are going to have leaves way on top. Not necessarily on the stem, but flowers are a little bit different. But I don't want you again to think just about flowers in the ground. A lot of different trees have flowers too, so this works for all of them. And now I want to break down the different parts. And the part that's probably most famous of all the flowers are the petals. They're the ones that are most colorful. They're the prettiest. They're the ones you pick off and say, he loves me not. I'm sure you've never done that. But anyways, they're the prettiest part. That's what makes flowers so appealing, is because they're colorful. They come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. Some have big, wide petals. Some have really thin ones. But this is the part that makes the seeds, okay? Excuse me. They protect the parts that make the seeds. So there is a very specific reason that they're pretty. And it's not just to buy your girlfriend on Valentine's Day. The reason they're pretty is to attract other different animals. You got to remember what we just said. They protect the parts of the flower that make the seed. All the important things to make the seed for the plant to reproduce is in the middle here. The petals help protect that, and when they open up, they help attract all the other animals to it because they're so pretty, right? That's the specific reason. It's all about how the plant can reproduce and how the plant can make seeds. And it starts with the petals. Doesn't have the petals, a lot of animals generally aren't coming to it. Now, the petals are pretty important. And what protects the petals? The sepals. This is one of those 5 parts you have to label on your worksheet, by the way. I want to show you what a sepal looks like at the beginning of a flower's life. Excuse me. If you focus down here, this is what they look at. Come on, picture. This is what they look like at the beginning. If it would pop up here. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I'm having some issues with it. But at any rate, this is there. See? You don't even see any of the flower petals. You don't see it at all. But these little things are called incredibly important when the flower is before it buds, before it spreads out, because they help protect it. Remember, going back to last slide, the petals are important to attract animals, but they're also important to protect all the stuff inside the petals. Well, the sepals start by protecting the flower right away. And sepals you probably don't see much because the pretty part are the petals, but the sepals, if you actually look underneath here, and they're usually tiny and some even fall off after it blooms because they're not needed anymore when it blooms. Just before it buds to help protect the petals. And it's pretty awesome. You ever see a picture of a flower blooming, the sepals spread apart and the petals come out and it looks neat. But again, these poor guys, they're really not needed for much after it blooms like that. But they're important to protect early on. Now, these are the most important parts. We talked about how the sepals protect the petals there, right? Right? Important. So the sepals protect the petals then protect this stuff, the pistil and the stamen. I purposely took a picture, a close-up right here. There are the petals right here, but without the pistil and the stamen, a plant's not making a seed. We're going to talk about the yellow stuff here soon, but this is what's called the stamen. All these little stalks here are stamens, and on top of that is pollen. So the pistil is what needs to get pollinated. Now, we're going to talk about this process soon, but the stamens are there. And if you remember here, we have all the petals. They attract all the different animals. And all the stamens are going to rub the pollen all over the different animals. And then hopefully the animals will go to another flower. And then once this pistil here gets another flower's pollen in it, then the process of pollination is complete and it can make a seed. Let me try to explain that in another way here, okay? I can actually show you some pictures here. The anther here, the anther is just the top part. The anther is the part where is called what is called the anther. So again, the petals, the stamen, the anther, top of the stamen here. Let's specifically talk about the pollination here. So if you remember correctly, you might have seen in the slide that there's a lot of different animals that pollinate. Now hummingbirds can help pollinate, and here's the thing. We got to go all the way back to what we studied a week or two ago about photosynthesis and how plants make their own sugar. And we talked about this jokingly that, man, plants get to eat sugar. Well, guess what? They also make some extra sugar to feed other animals, all for the sake of pollination. So, if you ever heard the term nectar in a flower, which a lot of animals are going and trying to eat, that's the sugar that they make. That's the food they get to eat. And yes, it is sweet to an animal, and that's why they like it. So, this flower right here has nectar at the very, very bottom, which they purposely do. Because if you remember here, the whole goal of pollination is to get pollen from a different flower into the pistil. And these stamens with the anthers on top can get rubbed all over the animal's body. When the animal goes to the next flower, hopefully this pollen gets into another flower's pistil. You cannot have pollen from this stamen, from this flower, go into this pistil. They cannot self-pollinate. It does not work that way. Okay, you have to get pollen from a different plant. Why? You might see a lot of plants that they have a lot of flowers all over the place. And if you ever see those little bees going from this flower, and then they go to this flower, and then they go to this flower, and then they go to this flower, that's exactly what the plant wants. Because if the bee is here, it gets that pollen all over its body, and then it goes to the next flower, and hopefully pollen from that flower is on the next flower's pistil, and then boom, the plant says, thank you, that's all we need. I can make a seed now. Thank you for helping pollinate there, Mr. Bee. But going back here, hummingbirds and bats do the same thing. And you can imagine how much pollen a bat and a hummingbird gets on it. I know God created hummingbirds with big, long beaks, but they still got to get way deep inside there to get the nectar. Ding, ding, ding. That way the flower can get pollen all over the bat's fur, all over the bird's face, and then when they go to get the nectar of the next flower, they get pollinating it. You probably see these maybe a little bit more frequently. I mean, look at all this pollen on this bee. If it goes and gets the nectar from this flower, man, it can't help when it gets to the next flower to get some pollen in the pistil. And remember, the bee and this butterfly could care less about pollination. They're just there to get a free meal. But in the process, God in His infinite wisdom said, hey, flowers, you guys can't move. You guys need some little help pollinating? We'll use some animals. You give them a free meal, they'll help pollinate. And that's how the seed gets created. It's all in the flowers, and it's all in the different parts of the flowers. But this pollen has to get to the pistil of a different flower, and that's how you pollinate. Now, I know I said that pollination happens a lot with different animals. Not always. You might know a dandelion, you see that, and maybe you pick it up and blow the little seeds. Now, those are the seeds, but you only see this. And man, if you guys have allergies, I hope you're not sneezing away like me, because that is a sight you don't ever want to see, but that is all pollen. That is all pollen. And sometimes, God in His infinite wisdom says, maybe animals aren't pollinating. What some plants can do is their pollen can get blown in the wind, and look at all this pollen blowing. You can imagine if there's flowers way over here, and the big wind comes, well, all the flowers over here are going to get some pollen into their pistil, which can help them get a seed there. That's more pollination at work. Not always done by animals. Now, we talked about the seeds, and we're going to talk about them more in the next couple weeks. Seeds come in all different shapes and sizes, but the result of proper plant fertilization is a seed. That's the part that holds all the DNA. If you remember the picture from yesterday with the sprouting and the germination, it all comes from a seed, but the seed would never be there without pollinating from the flower. That's why seeing how we're connecting it there? Oh yeah, look at that germination. And of course you see how a tree might protect its seeds there, right? You bite into the fruit and the seeds in the middle. Well, the fruit's really just there not to get a meal, but just to protect the seed. We'll talk about that in a day or two here. If you ever kind of wonder, hey, we got a red rose, we got a white rose. Well, what would happen? A little side note here. What would happen if a bee would go in here, drink the nectar, get some pollen, go right in here, get some more nectar, but in the process get some pollen from this red rose into this white rose pistil? That can happen, and you might guess that when this seed falls to the ground and sprouts or germinates, we all of a sudden get a pink rose, huh? Nature's amazing how God made it. But hey, we're going to talk about some seeds tomorrow. I want you to focus on the plants today, the flowers today. You got 5 parts to label. The stem we really didn't talk about, what we did talk about in other days. I want you to be focusing on the pistil, stamen, stem, petal, and the sepal. If you don't remember what those are, hey, just rewind the video. Look through all the different sides. I think I had them all labeled there, and that'll get you the answers. Have a wonderful day, guys. Praise your Savior.